Yo, what's going on YouTube, and welcome to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and we are taking a look at my latest power rankings for the end of 2020. This is my last power rankings for the 2020 year. We'll be taking a look at that in this video. If you like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey, want to see the latest news around the NHL, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and a subscribe down below, and let's take a look at my last NHL Power Rankings for 2020. Alright, so before we get too far into this video, guys, want to give a quick plug to our Instagram and Twitter handles at goalline_hockey. Links will be in the description down below, as well as playing throughout this video. And make sure to check out our Patreon if you want to financially support the channel. We have a weekly podcast every Thursday night talking about the latest news around the league, as well as we answer some of your questions from here in the YouTube channel comment section. So maybe if you want your questions answered on the podcast, make sure to leave your feedback down below. And make sure to give this video a thumbs up or thumbs down and a subscribe. So I'll give you a second to do that real quick. So thumbs up, thumbs down, either or helps me out. And subscribe. Click. Alright, you did that? Alright, cool. So let's get into this video. So guys, the NHL Power Rankings, and this is my favorite. I love doing Power Rankings. I miss, probably the most I hate about not having an NHL season is every Friday making a weekly Power Rankings for you guys. Because I love all the hate that I get, as well as all the love that I get for my weekly Power Rankings. But because we haven't had, hockey for so long, there's really been no need for a Power Rankings. Nothing really changes that much when there's not really much going on with no NHL hockey being played. So let's get right into this. So we're going to start things off at number 31. And I think some of you are going to be upset by this because I know I have some LA King fans out there. But we are heading down to California to the Los Angeles Kings. I think the Los Angeles Kings are the worst team in the NHL right now. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I think the LA Kings, they're just a very slow hockey team. I think they've made some improvements. Their team has gotten better. But again, when you've got a team where you've just got so many older guys, I mean, their kryptonite is their first line. They just don't have the guys. When you've got, come on, Kopitar, Dustin Brown, and Alex Iafallo as your top line. I like what they've got going, though. The depth of the young guys is going to be huge. You look at some of those guys they have: Rasmus Kupari, Arthur Kaliev, Quentin Byfield, Alex Turcotte. Do you want me to keep going? The Los Angeles Kings have plenty of depth coming up, but again, as of right now, they are not ready for that window of really being a real contender in the NHL. And I think a lot of people, I know you King fans will be disappointed with this, with them being at 31. But again, they're in a rebuild. This is not a year where we're expecting the Los Angeles Kings to be this world beater. So I think it's okay that they are at 31 right now. All right, so at number 30, guys, this team gets banged up really bad because of their goaltending. I am not good with their goaltending, and at least the Kings know they're developing potentially a guy like what's his name, that young goaltender. See, now I forgot his name already. That's how irrelevant he is. But going to the Blackhawks, their goaltending is even worse, if that's even possible. They probably have the worst goaltending in the league. Malcolm Subban and Colin Delia. I am not a fan of that. We've seen Subban really struggle in the NHL. Colin Delia has a potential to move forward and potentially become a starter, but I just don't see that, especially with the Blackhawks defense. These guys are going to get bombarded with lots of shots. I'm not a fan of their blue line. It continues to get older and slower, and I think it's only going to get worse for the Blackhawks this year. They do have some talent up front, obviously, with Jonathan Toews, Patrick Kane, Alex Nylander, as well as some of those other guys like DeBrincat, as well as Kirby Dach and Dominic Kubalik. It's just not going to help them. Defense wins championships, and they aren't going to get in the playoffs because of their goaltending, but their defense is definitely lacking as well. So at number 29, I do not think they will be the worst team in the NHL this year, and that is the team that was the worst team in the NHL last year. That's Steve Yzerman's Detroit Red Wings at 29 in my final power rankings for 2020. The Detroit Red Wings are not a great team by any means. This is a team that still has a lot of work to do, but we've seen that they have some potential, and I think adding some pretty nice pieces. You've added guys like, Vladislav Nemesnikov, Bobby Ryan, Adam Ernie. I mean, these are guys that they just seem to fit into the organization. And obviously keeping a guy like Anthony Mantha, seeing the emergence of guys like Robbie Fabry, Philip Zadina, as well as the blue line is going to look different. And I think that's the problem. Their blue line looks different. I don't know if it necessarily got better, though. So the Red Wings, I do like their goaltending. I really like Thomas Greiss with the New York Islanders. He's going to be the starter there. Jonathan Bernier is not a great goaltender. That's how I was able to regard the Red Wings ahead of LA and Chicago, because I think Thomas Greiss really is a difference maker in that regard, and they are at 29 in my power rankings. So at 28 in this week's in my final power rankings for 2020, we are taking a look at the San Jose Sharks. You may be saying, what are you talking about? How are they that low? You're telling me that they're behind the Anaheim Ducks? Yes, I think by the end of the year, they will be behind the Anaheim Ducks. First line, Evander Kane, Tomas Hertl, Kevin Labanc, Timo Meier, Logan Couture, and Noah Gregor line out the rest of that top six. The big issue is injuries. If we see guys like Hertl and Couture are out for significant time like they were last season, that's going to be a problem. And their blue line is not getting better. Brent Burns, Carlson, Vlasic is not really doing that well. We saw the emergence of guys like Mario Ferraro and Radim Šimić, who are good signs for the San Jose Sharks. But then you look in between the pipes and Martin Jones and Devin Dubnyk. I don't think that's a saving grace for this San Jose Sharks team. Devin Dubnyk may have some potential, but I don't think it's enough. And I have the San Jose Sharks at 28 in this power ranking. All right, so at 27, we have the other California teams. So all three California teams are out, and we are only up to 27. The Anaheim Ducks. The Anaheim Ducks are at 27 in this power rankings. Now, the big issue with the Anaheim Ducks is I'm getting quite concerned about their blue line, as it's not that fast, and their depth up front is a little bit concerning. I think Hampus Lindholm and Josh Manson, Cam Fowler, and Shattenkirk, that's a pretty solid top four blue line. And then their bottom six, you got Juice and Curran. I don't even know who Curran is. And Juice is a former Hershey Bear, but he just never worked out. And he got traded by the Capitals, and now we're seeing him here. So, I don't know. And then you look at the bottom six, they're going to rely a lot on the young guys on that third line to score goals. You're going to need guys like Jones, Sam Steele, Troy Terry to produce on that third line. Because now in the top six, you're really bolstering your top six really on that first line in Silfverberg, Henrique, and Rickard Rakell. Your second line, you're already going to a kind of a bust with the Columbus Blue Jackets and Sonny Milano. The ghost of Ryan Getzlaf at this point, and Danton Heinen, who was a bottom six player with the Boston Bruins. So the Anaheim Ducks, I don't know how great they are. Again, health is going to be big, because if John Gibson stays healthy, I'm not that concerned, because he is going to play a lot of games. But as we know, this next season is going to be crunched up. We're going to see a lot more back-to-backs, as well as 3 games in 4 nights. And that means a lot more Anthony Stolarz, who was a third goaltender with the Philadelphia Flyers a couple years back. Not really the best situation behind John Gibson. So, 27 for the Anaheim Ducks. At 26, we have... At 26, we have the Arizona Coyotes. Guys, I am not sold on the Arizona Coyotes one bit. Now, they do have a great Howe, but it doesn't really matter once you get onto the ice. They've got some issues with this team. Nick Schmaltz, Christian Dvorak, and Connor Garland are that first line. Those guys have to step up. There's no questions asked. They need them to step up. Second line, you have Keller, Stepan, and Kessel. I think Stepan and Kessel are really not that great anymore, if I'm going to be honest. Lawson Krause, Barrett Hayden, and Christian Fisher on the third line. Again, that's your young line again. So they're relying on a lot of youth, and they really need to step up big this year, and it's asking a lot of those guys. Blue line looks decent. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Jason Demers have been a pretty nice pair. Goligoski and Chychrun. not the best, but again, pretty solid. And in between the pipes, as long as Kemper and Ronta can stay healthy, the Coyotes have a decent goaltending tandem. So maybe they're a little bit low here. But again, I think some of the losses that they had this offseason in Hall and Hinostroza, I just don't know if guys like Tyler Pitlick really make them that much better. All right, so at number 25, this is another one. I think people may be surprised having them this low here, but I am not a fan of what Jim Rutherford has done with the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Pittsburgh Penguins at 25 in my power rankings. Now, you look at their team, you added Kasperi Kapanen, which was a great addition. You added Jason Zucker last year at the trade deadline, and you also made a couple of little moves, bring in a guy like Michael Matheson on the blue line. I'm just not a fan of this group. And obviously losing Matt Murray puts them in a situation where we have to see what is Tristan Jarry and Casey DeSmith as your starting goaltenders moving forward. And Casey DeSmith and Jarry have shown that they are legit goaltenders. And the fact that Matt Murray was struggling made it easier to move Matt Murray out. So I don't think losing Matt Murray hurts them that much. I think it's more the issue of guys like Malkin and Crosby continuing to get older. And now you're seeing guys like Mark Jankowski, Teddy Bluger, Sam Lafferty. At points, they played well last season. But again, I'm just not sold. You've got Brian Dumoulin and Chris Letang. They have to stay healthy. Marcus Pettersson and John Marino on the second pair is good. But again, Matheson and Chad Roweedle, I'm not a fan of that third pair for the Penguins. And I just think depth is going to hurt them this year. They already have Zach Aston-Reese, who is already out right now. So, man, the Pittsburgh Penguins, I'm hoping the best for them. But I don't know if Kasperi Kapanen is enough for this Penguins team to get back into the playoffs next year. All right, so at 24, we head up to northern New Jersey, up in Newark at the New Jersey Devils. Now, the New Jersey Devils, I'm giving them some credit here because I like the depth that they have, and I think it's going to help them through a long NHL season. Now, you look at their current lines right now. You've got Andreas Janssen, Hischier, and Gusev on the top line. Jesper Bratt, Jack Hughes, and Kyle Palmieri. And then you've got a whole bunch of depth in the bottom six, a bunch of young guys. Jesper Bolkvist, Yanni Kokkonen, Pavel Zacha, Miles Wood, Michael McLeod, Ryan Merkley. Those are all young guys, and they are going to be relying a lot on those guys this season. Now you look at the defense, you got Will Butcher and PK Subban, as well as Ryan Murray, Damon Severson, Kulikov, and Ty Smith. That's why I think they're better than Pittsburgh, because I like Ty Smith and Kulikov on that bottom pair, and I like the goaltending. I really think that Corey Crawford and Mackenzie Blackwood is a better tandem than Casey DeSmith and Tristan Jarry up in Pittsburgh. And I think they're going to be the two bottom feeders in that Metropolitan Division, if that's even a thing next year. But I really like what we've seen from the Devils in terms of their goaltending upgrades this offseason. So I have them at 24 in this rankings. At number 23, we have the Nashville Predators. I think the Predators are another team that's going to disappoint again this season. I think a lot of moves that they made this offseason, bringing in a guy like Luke Kunin, I think was a good addition. You're seeing some different moves, like a guy like Brad Richardson coming in. You see a guy like Mark Borowiecki, who was with Ottawa, coming in. It's just a different team. And in between the pipes, UC Saros and Pekka Rinne, I think gives them a chance. But again, as Rinne continues to get older, and UC Saros' really his inability to become that full-time starter in Nashville has made me question how good is UC Saros going to be in the NHL. And I think that's something we have to keep an eye on. So that's why, unfortunately, I have the Predators at 23 in that would-be Central Division. So at number 22, moving up big time, I think, is the Ottawa Senators. Guys, I think the Senators are due for some upgrades. They got a new rebrand on jerseys, a new brand on their logo overall. I like what the Ottawa Senators are doing. And you look at their lineup, Brady Tkachuk, Colin White, and Evgeny Dadonov. I think that's a pretty decent line. If Dadonov can put up 30, 40 goals next season, I think that's a great upgrade for the Ottawa Senators compared to what they've been getting over the past couple of years. Tim Stuchla, Chris Tierney, and Connor Brown on that second line. You could really throw in Josh Norris, Alex Galchenyuk, Drake Batherson. Any of those middle six guys they're pretty interchangeable. And then obviously on the bottom line, you've got Watson, Paul, and Anisimov. That's pretty decent, I guess. Then on the defense, you have Artem Zub, Nikita Zaitsev, Thomas Chabot, and Eric Branstrom. Eric Branstrom has got to develop in a top 4 defenseman this year for the Ottawa Senators. I think that's a huge thing for them if he's going to get to that next step for the Senators. And obviously in between the pipes, Anders Nilsson ended the season quite well for an Ottawa Senators team that was completely decimated by the end of the year, as well as Matt Murray becoming the full-time starter moving forward for the Ottawa Senators. If he can get that resurgence back, I think he's going to be a great goaltender there in Ottawa. I'm a little bit skeptic of his injuries as well as how he ended his career with the Pittsburgh Penguins. So I'm a little bit worried about Tristan Jarr again with Matt Murray. But a new spotlight, a new opportunity in Ottawa, we'll have to see how he adjusts to that. All right, so now we move up to number 21, as I think the Columbus Blue Jackets will once again be in that mix late for a potential playoffs. At 21, I have them missing the playoffs this coming season, but if you look at their roster, that's really the reason. They don't, I think Jarmo Kekalainen missed the mark to really bring in that big player. If he still brings in a guy like Mike Hoffman or a guy like Mikael Granlund, that may change my mind, but he has not done that to this point. And you look at their top 2 lines, you got Texier, Dubois, and Bjorkstrand, Foligno, Domi, and Atkinson. And you've added a couple of guys. You've seen Mikhail Grigorenko, as well as Koivu come in down the middle. But again, we don't know how good Grigorenko is going to be. He's been in the KHL for the past couple of years, and Mikko Koivu continues to get older. So I think he's more of a leadership guy than an actual skilled, point-producing forward at this point. Blue line, you probably have one of the top, probably the best pairs in the NHL as your top pair in Zach Werenski and Seth Jones. But everything beyond that gets a little bit interesting. You've got Gavrikov, as well as Carlson, Dean Kukin, and Savard. I don't know about that. And the goaltending has to be better than it was last year. Jonas Korpisalo and Elvis Merzlikins, are they the real deal? And obviously losing Gustav Nyquist, he will be out for an extended period of time next season. So the Columbus Blue Jackets lose yet another forward in that depth chart. So I think it's going to be a tough year for the Blue Jackets. That coaching staff by John Tortorella will keep them in games, will keep them late into the season as a competitive team to compete in the playoffs, but I just don't think they have enough skill. I don't think they have enough talent, and the goaltending is going to be totally different next year. I don't know if they're going to be able to do what they did last year in Korpisalo and Merzlikins. They're going to have to show that they're the real deal this year if they want to make the playoffs. So at number 20, we got the Minnesota Wild. I think the Minnesota Wild made some nice upgrades in the offseason, and Bill Guerin is doing this rebuild thing pretty well over there in Minneapolis. As you look at that group, you've added Kirill Kaprizov, who was a draft pick that's coming over from Russia. That's a huge addition. Marcus Johansson on that top line, I don't know about that as the center, but that's how they have it listed. Obviously bringing in Kevin Fiala from Nashville last year, another great move that we saw. But then now we start to get to interesting players. Guys like Matt Zuccarello, Zach Parise, Nick Bukestad, Nick Bonino, Victor Rask. Can those guys stay healthy in their forward group? That's a majority of their forward group. Can they stay healthy? And that's going to be huge for them. And we need to see the emergence of a guy like Jordan Greenway and Joel Eriksson Ek up front if they really want to be a legit team next season in that would-be Central Division. And the blue line is still pretty solid. That's why I have them at least having a fighting chance. You got Suter, Spurgeon, Brodin, Dumba, Carson Soucy, as well as Brad Hunt. I don't think that's a great defensive pairing, but again, I think the goaltending is where it really hurts them. Cam Talbot and Alex Stalock I don't think that's a great goaltending tandem. It's not much of an upgrade over Devin Dubnyk last season. So at number 20, we've got the Minnesota Wild and missing the playoffs, most notably because that goaltending is just not good enough. All right, so we just take a quick water break. All right, so now we have our first playoff team here. At number 19, we have the would-be Winnipeg Jets. I have the Winnipeg Jets making the playoffs in that Western Conference. We're just going off because we don't have the new realignment of the division. So we're just going off of the current right at this point here, which is November 28th. So we're just going off of that. The Winnipeg Jets get into the playoffs. any team with Connor Hellebuyck on it and a Vezina finalist every season is going to have a chance to do something. And I think we're going to see that from the Winnipeg Jets. And I think their blue line is still lacking, but they've added up front. And I think, with bringing back Paul Stastny was huge for the Winnipeg Jets. And you've still got Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, and Blake Wheeler. Nikolai Ehlers, Stastny, and Patrick Laine in your top 6. That's a pretty solid top 6. And their bottom 6 is not completely terrible. Adam Lowry is going to have his dad actually coach as an assistant, so that's going to be interesting. And then the blue line, you've still got guys like Josh Morrissey, Neil Pionk, I think Tucker Pullman, and Derek Forbort. They have them listed pretty low, but I think they're pretty solid defensemen in a third pairing role. So, not going to lie, I kind of like what we've seen from the Winnipeg Jets. And then obviously in between the pipes, you have Laurent Brossoit and Connor Hellebuyck. And remember, this team doesn't have Brian Little. They will start the season without Brian Little next season. I think with him inserted as another center there with Lowry and who was the other guy? It was Lowry and who else? Lowry and Nate Thompson from Anaheim. So I think that's a pretty solid bottom 6 there for the Winnipeg Jets. I have them making the playoffs even at number 19. Because we got a bunch of Eastern Conference teams. At number 18, we have the Florida Panthers. I think some key losses this season, key departures, are what ruins this for the Florida Panthers. They didn't get into the playoffs last season, and now losing guys, you're relying on a lot of youth. And if I'm a betting man, I'm not going to bet on that until you've shown, show me the receipts. What do you have for me? And until those guys show that for me, I'm not going to be willing to give them a great rating. So I think there's a lot to be seen from Grigory Denisenko and Owen Tippett, but the loss, obviously, of Mike Hoffman and Evgeny Dadonov, you cannot say that it does not hurt this team. As well as losing a guy like Vincent Trocheck and replacing it with Alex Wenberg makes you once again question, what are the Florida Panthers doing? Now, they did make a good move bringing in Patrick Hornquist for that top 6 to at least alleviate the loss of both Hoffman and Dadonov, but again, it's a different type of player. You need Tippett and Grigory Denisenko to score goals because that's really what they're lacking on this team. And their blue line looks decent. You added, a guy like Ratko Gudas and Anton Strawman. So this is definitely a different group. Marcus Nudavara coming over from Columbus. So I don't know how I feel about that blue line. And then in between the pipes, Bobrovsky has to be good. I think he's got to be better than good, really, if they want to make the playoffs. And based off of what we saw last season, I don't see that right now with the Florida Panthers. So I have them at number 18. At number 17, we've got David Quinn's New York Rangers. The New York Rangers at number 17. Forgot the number. So at number 17, guys, they have one of the best forward cores in the NHL, but their blue line is going to hurt them. And we have to see a full season here of some of the young guys in between the pipes. How is a guy like Alexander Georgiev and Igor Shesterkin, how are they going to do without Henrik Lundqvist? It's going to be an interesting looking New York Rangers team next year. I think David Quinn will actually bring this team down. And I think if I have them just missing the playoffs here at number 17. I think they missed the playoffs this season. I could see some changes with New York in terms of management. I do not like what we've seen from David Quinn. He doesn't seem like that guy. Despite all the talent they have, despite everything going on, if the Rangers miss the playoffs, I believe it will be because of David Quinn. I have them at number 17 in this rankings. I know I'm going to take a lot of flack for that one. At number 16, we've got the Dallas Stars. The Dallas Stars here at number 16. They get back into the postseason in a wild card spot out in the West Coast. They're an interesting team. Despite not having Tyler Seguin and Ben Bishop, I still think they can do some damage in that Central Division. You've got some teams in there that just aren't that great. Guys like Minnesota and Nashville and Chicago help out a team like Dallas, and they kind of forfeitingly get into that spot because of the lack of talent right now in that division. And I think Dallas has the capabilities. You got some pretty solid guys, and I think they just sneak into the playoffs because they have the right group. As long as some of those young guys continue to develop up front, I think they get back into the postseason. At number 15, we have the Toronto Maple Leafs. I know this is going to rub people the wrong way, and I actually have them missing the playoffs. Now, hold on. The gap between them and number 14 Boston is very small. But if you look in recent history, you cannot deny that if you had to choose between the Boston Bruins and the Toronto Maple Leafs, that you have to choose the Boston Bruins right now because of their recent success. Until Toronto knocks off and slays that dragon, I'm going to go with the Boston Bruins every day of the week. Now, the only questions around Boston are that we don't know their goaltending and how is their defense going to look next season. There's a little bit more stability with Toronto, so I wouldn't be surprised if this comes back to bite me in the future, but until I've been proven otherwise, I'm going with number 15 Toronto, number 14 Boston. I just killed two birds with one stone in that one. At number 13, we have the Carolina Hurricanes. I think the Carolina Hurricanes have one of the best blue lines in the NHL. And we talk about defense wins championships. I think Rod Brind'Amour is a very good coach. And I really like what they have on that blue line. Jacob Slavin, Dougie Hamilton, Brett Pesce, Brady Shea, Jake Gardiner, and Hayden Fleury. Now, the biggest question for the Carolina Hurricanes is in between the pipes. Is James Reimer and Peter Mrazek going to be able to get it done for the Hurricanes next year? That's really the big question with the Canes. But then you look at up front, you've got Svechnikov, Aho, Teravainen, Niederreiter, Warren Fogle, Jordan Staal, Netchas, Trocheck. That's a pretty solid forward core. So the Carolina Hurricanes are far from perfect, but I believe defense wins championships. And defense will definitely get you in the playoffs. If their goaltending is good enough, they should be in the playoffs next year at number 13. Lucky 13 for the Hurricanes. So at number 12, we head back to the Pacific Division. We've got the Edmonton Oilers. I think the Edmonton Oilers fall casualty to goaltending. I think goaltending is a huge concern for the Edmonton Oilers this season. And if they miss the playoffs, they're lucky they're in that Pacific Division. If it stands the way it is, if we see this realignment of the NHL, I think Edmonton will get brutally beat by that because the Pacific Division is a lot easier to get into a playoff spot than the projected, division realignment with all Canadian teams. It's going to make it more difficult for the Oilers. I think Mike Smith, I love the guy. He's got a temper. He's not afraid to fight as a goaltender, but he just is not going to get it done. And we know Mikko Koskinen will not be getting it done. So to rely a lot on Mike Smith, you obviously losing Oscar Klefbom for most of next season with shoulder surgery, another huge loss. Is Tyson Barrie going to rebound, and get back to his career that he had in Colorado, or is he going to stay the way he was, like he was in Toronto, where he wasn't that successful? So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But in terms of the two Alberta teams, I don't like what we've seen with the Oilers because of in between the pipes. And now moving up to number 11 is the Calgary Flames. So they're really not that far off from each other. I think adding Jacob Markstrom was huge for the Calgary Flames. And as long as Markstrom stays healthy, I don't see why they can't get into the playoffs next season. Yes, you've lost a couple guys on the blue line, guys like Travis Hamonic, who I think is a huge loss for them, and again, in TJ Brody, but that's just how it goes. And I think they've got some young guys coming up like Rasmus Anderson and Chillington. I think they will be able to replace those roles quite fittingly for the Calgary Flames. At number 10, we move up into the top 10. There we go. Number 10, guys. It's my hometown boys, the New York Islanders at number 10 in my power rankings. I think the Islanders still need help with their team, but based off of how that division is lined up, and you can't tell me that the Islanders are not a steady team right now, based off of Barry Trotz and his coaching staff. And it seems like the goalie wizardry continues for Piero Greco as well as the other guy. I forgot his name. But those two coaches for the goaltending for the Islanders have made wonders. Look what they did with Robin Leonard, Thomas Greiss, and now we're going to see it here with Semyon Varlamov and hopefully Ilya Sorokin. If Ilya Sorokin is the real deal for the Islanders, guys, don't be surprised if the Islanders are closer to the tippy top of that Metropolitan Division. But again, the goal scoring has been an issue for the Islanders, and if they can't score goals, that's becoming a theme for the Islanders. Teams are more wary of what you see in the Islanders. So defense wins championships, that's right. And the Islanders are going to see a different blue line with guys like Devin Tays coming out, Noah Dobson coming in, as well as some other depth guys. So the Islanders will look different next year in that bottom six as well. Kiefer Bellows, Oliver Wahlstrom coming up. So this is going to be an interesting year for the Islanders. A little bit of a transition, and I think it's pretty exciting. I think the Islanders move up to number 10 in this rankings for the end of 2020. At number 9, we have the Buffalo Sabres surging up the charts. Went from a non-playoff team to really, in my eyes, potentially being better than both Boston and Toronto. And you may be thinking, what are you, nuts? The reason for that is I just think Buffalo, adding Taylor Hall, another year of some of these young guys like Victor Olofsson coming in. You've seen the addition of a guy like Eric Stahl, Dylan Cousins, who is going to be a rookie this season. I think those guys are going to set the world aflame. And I really like what we've seen from Rasmus Dahlin. I made a video on him a couple weeks ago. As he continues to develop, I don't see why the ceiling can't be any higher for him. Now, the big question is, in between the pipes, is Carter Hutton and Linus Ullmark going to get it done for the Buffalo Sabres? I truly believe goaltending is huge in the NHL, almost as probably more important than goaltending, than defense. But again, I think this is another year where Buffalo maybe moves up. I don't know how long-term this is for the Buffalo Sabres, but I think they can move up into a top spot in that Atlantic Division. I'm going to take a lot of heat for that one. At number 8, we have the St. Louis Blues. The St. Louis Blues are still a pretty solid team. Despite losing Alex Pietrangelo, Torrey Krug is a great replacement. He is not Alex Pietrangelo, but he is a good replacement. Not completely him, but a decent player. And I think Torrey Krug adds something to the Blues that they need, and that's a more offensive-minded defenseman. And I think they're going to get that. They've already got guys like Vince Dunn, who are much more defensive-minded, Colton Parayko. So now you add in a Torrey Krug who can move the play forward. I think that could be an edge for the St. Louis Blues, and I like this move. I think they look pretty solid as long as Jordan Binnington gets back to his game 2 years ago. There is a chance that the St. Louis Blues get back in the playoffs next year. So there's another team I think some people may be shocked by. At number 7, it's like, why have you not talked about Bergevin's club up in Montreal yet? They're ahead of Carolina, Boston, Toronto, Buffalo. Those fans are going to literally start throwing pitchforks at me. At number 7, guys, we have the Montreal Canadiens. I like what I've seen from the Montreal Canadiens as long as Carey Price can stay healthy. And even with that, I think adding Jake Allen is due for a big season next year with the Montreal Canadiens. And I think the emergence of guys like Ryan Poehling, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, I think, Nick Suzuki, look how good he was in that playoff series against Pittsburgh. I think there's a lot of excitement around the Montreal Canadiens. And not to mention, Romanov on the blue line coming in. There's a lot to be excited about up in Montreal. I think Claude Julien is the right bench boss there for Montreal. I think they get things done. And obviously adding guys like Tyler Toffoli into the mix. I mean, they've got a really good group there in Montreal. So don't be surprised if they are one of the better teams in that Atlantic Division next year. Quick water break. All right, so at number 6, guys, we have the Washington Capitals. The big question for the Caps going into this next season is goaltending. Is Ilya Samsonov going to be healthy? He was riding ATVs in the water. It flipped on him. He rolled over on rocks and had major surgery. So Samsonov is not in the best shape right now. Hopefully it's not career-threatening for Ilya Samsonov, and it may come back to bite him in the next couple of years. Hopefully not. But Ilya Samsonov is projected to be the starter for the Caps moving forward. And Henrik Lundqvist coming over from Manhattan and the New York Rangers. Talk about a shift. That is just unbelievable. From the Rangers to the Capitals, a pretty big rivalry between those two teams, especially with the playoff history they've had in the 2000s with Henrik Lundqvist as a starter for the Rangers. It's going to be interesting seeing Henrik Lundqvist and Alexander Ovechkin in the same uniform. All right, so at number 5, we've got the Colorado Avalanche. Now, some of you may be wondering, why are they not further up in the top 3? I'm still slightly concerned about the goaltending of Pavel Francouz and Philip Grubauer. Grubauer, if he's healthy and plays as well as he did down the stretch last season, I think they will be just fine. But there is that concern about Pavel Francouz and that guy behind Philip Grubauer. And I think that's something that the Avalanche have got to figure out. They've got a great offense, a great defense. They just got to figure out that goaltending. And as long as that goaltending stays solid next season, the Avalanche, I think, are once again going to be Stanley Cup favorites next year. At number 4, guys, we've got the Philadelphia Flyers and the Broad Street Bullies. I think the Philadelphia Flyers have a really solid roster, probably one of the best goaltenders in the NHL last season, and Carter Hart. I think Carter Hart's due for another great season in the NHL. We've seen how good he is as a goaltender. I think we're going to see that again from Hart this season. The Flyers have a really solid blue line. They've got a pretty solid forward group up front. I don't see why the Flyers can't go on another run this year. They lost to the New York Islanders in the conference semifinals, but don't be surprised if they go to the Stanley Cup final next year. They're another team like the Avalanche. They could be Cup favorite sleepers next year. Then you've got at number 3. We move into the Pacific Division as we've got the Vegas Golden Knights. The Vegas Golden Knights are not going to be what they've been. I think defense, they've really solidified a number 1 defenseman. You've got Shea Theodore and Alex Pietrangelo as your top pair. And there's no argument that this is a very good group. Vegas fever is in the air there in Vegas. A lot of guys want to go play in Vegas. And the top free agent in this year's draft and this year's free agency, and Alex Pietrangelo, did exactly that. Exiling St. Louis, where he was the captain of the St. Louis Blues, now goes over to Vegas for the Vegas fever, for the glitz and glamour of Las Vegas. So, the Vegas Golden Knights are going to look very interesting. Probably one of the best goaltending tandems in the NHL. You've got Robin Lehner and Marc-Andre Fleury. You've bolstered up that blue line. The forward group has gotten younger, but I think that could be a good thing as we potentially see guys like Peyton Krebs and Cody Glass get some minutes out there for the Golden Knights. I like what we've seen from the Golden Knights. They're at number 3 in my rankings. Guys, at number 2. This may shock a lot of you as we head up to that Canadian team out west. It's kind of lost on an island out there. It is the Vancouver Canucks. That's right, the Vancouver Canucks at number 2 in my power rankings here to end the year 2020. I'm telling you right now, the Vancouver Canucks are due for a run this season. And you've got a great goaltending situation. Thatcher Demko and Braden Holtby. And I think that's a great goaltending tandem. Holtby's going to find his reemergence there in Vancouver. He kind of lost his footing once Piero Greco left for the New York Islanders job. His goaltending was definitely, his coaching staff was a little bit different there in Washington. So I think a new fresh face down up in Washington, up in Vancouver, very far away from Washington, I think will do some good for Braden Holtby. He's brought his 2 turtles over the border now, and even better, he gets to play with a very solid young goaltender in Thatcher Demko, where he can hopefully be a mentor for the young guy and get this Vancouver Canucks team, I believe, to the top of the Western Conference this season. I think Travis Green has it in him. We've got Brock Besser, Bo Horvat, Elias Pettersson, as well as some of that other talent that they have there in Vancouver. Guys, I'm really excited for the Vancouver Canucks this season, and I think the emergence of Pettersson coming up for that forward group, as well as Quinn Hughes on the blue line, this Vancouver Canucks team, the ceiling is the limit, and I think they will be at number 2 next season. And this one's pretty self-explanatory. At number 1, we have the defending Stanley Cup champions. The number 1 team is the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Tampa Bay Lightning, I have a saying, you don't get knocked off until you get knocked off, literally. And they have not gotten knocked off. Until next season, there's no real argument to say that there's a better team right now than Tampa Bay. They just re-signed Mikhail Sergachev. They have to re-sign Anthony Cirelli. But despite losing guys like Kevin Shattenkirk and a guy like Pat Maroon, I don't really think it's hurt them all that much. I think they just have such a talented group. Andrei Vasilevsky is one of the best goalies in the league, and I just think this team is just too good right now. And I don't really see anybody in that same vein of the Tampa Bay Lightning in terms of on-paper roster. So guys, let me know in the comment section down below, what do you think of my last power rankings for the end of 2020? I know I'm going to get a lot of hate from some of you out there, but also probably a little bit of love, I hope a little bit, at some point through this power rankings. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and a subscribe down below as well. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.